With Labor Day weekend ahead of us, American labor is back in the spotlight. And for lawmakers in Lansing, there is a renewed focus on preventing child labor exploitation. Our political reporter, Rachel Louise Just, breaks down a new bill that would crack down on anyone violating the state's labor laws.
As kids and teens head back to the classroom, new legislation introduced in Lansing is aiming to make sure Michigan students aren't heading towards dangerous working conditions, too.
Make sure that our kids are safe so that they can focus on what they need to focus on, growing, getting their education.
Bill sponsor Phil Skaggs says he was spurred to action by a February New York Times article, which highlighted child labor violations in his own backyard of Grand Rapids. Those aren't the only violations the state has seen recently. In June, an Ionia County meat processing owner was sentenced after his 17-year-old employee had his hand cut off in a meat grinder.
The problem is that we don't have a lot of teeth to enforcement of those laws.
Child labor in 2023, Skaggs says, can look like an employer forcing an underage worker to work in dangerous conditions or making them work long hours or overnight shifts. While there are penalties for employers that break child labor laws in Michigan, they haven't been updated in a long time. In fact, they haven't been updated since the 1980s. And Skaggs says now what Michigan needs to do to address this problem comes down to enforcement and penalties. Michigan's new budget put funding towards inspectors for minor employing businesses. Skaggs' bill will upgrade the penalties from $500 to now $5,000 for a first offense.
If you don't get the picture the first time, then it's going to become a felony in $25,000 or $50,000.
The legislation goes the opposite direction of bills proposed in other states over the past few years. In Iowa this May, the governor signed legislation allowing teens to work longer hours and letting them work at more kinds of jobs. Supporters in that state and others have argued the changes help employers who are having a hard time hiring. Skaggs says this bill wouldn't change any laws to deter employees from hiring teens, but they'd have to follow state guidelines when they do.
These are important jobs to help kids have spending money or even help out their families. We don't want to get in the way of that. We just want to make sure that everyone has a right to childhood.
Migrant children can be especially at risk. The U.S. Department of Labor says it's found a 70% increase in the number of kids illegally employed by companies in the last 5 years. In Lansing, Rachel Louise Just.